Oh my gosh, it's that time. It's that time already. I've got a button here to do a thing. I think it's this one. And then it moves, and then a thing happens. And then, hey there, friends. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it might be in your part of the world. Welcome back to the live stream. My name is CSharpFritz, and this is Learn C Sharp with CSharpFritz. How you doing out there? It's so good to see you. Look, I gotta adjust my hat. I got the NASA hat on today. It's gonna be great. We're gonna have a good time today. We're gonna be talking more about .NET Aspire, and we're gonna learn about how to deploy your application using .NET Aspire. Today we're gonna focus on Azure, but there's similar instructions out there for other places. We're gonna talk through the pluses and minuses of building, deploying, and how to get that working in a continuous deployment type of scenario. Let me head over. Let's bring in the chat room. They're right over here. There we are. It's always sunny in Philadelphia, but let's bring in the chat room. Say hello to our friends there. Good to see you. C Sharp Titan is here on YouTube. Hello. Wodecraft. Good to see you. Lakshmi Prabhakar Kopolo. I hope I pronounced that right. Good morning to you in Dallas, Texas. Hello. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for asking. Matthias, how you doing there on YouTube? Yes, it is. It's almost starting. It is started. Here we go. How you doing there? Indian Up. Welcome in from India, watching on YouTube. Ryan Wakefield, really interested in learning how to deploy Aspire on-prem. We're not going to talk about on-prem, but I will talk about and show you how things, really your existing scripts, you can continue to use, and you just need to bring along the same configuration. We'll show you a little bit about that today. Let me make sure I get my notepad working here so I can fill in some of those things that folks want to see, and I can make sure I adapt the demos here appropriately. Yeah, talk about deploying on-prem. Make sure we cover a little bit about that. Absolutely. How you doing there? Is it Tyronis? Hello. Greetings to you on Twitch. Yes, today, YouTube, absolutely. We broadcast these to both Microsoft channels. Over on my stream, I only broadcast to Twitch yesterday. We weren't seeing very many folks watching on YouTube, so just made sense to take it easy and focus on only one channel. Hello there, C Sharp Dev on YouTube. Hello, friendo. Good to see you. Andrew, greetings to you in Spain. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Barry's on YouTube saying good morning, and peeps from northern Kentucky in the States. I need to visit Kentucky at some point. I flew into Cincinnati Airport once, and I understand that that's kind of across the border in Kentucky. But I need to visit Kentucky and learn a little bit more about how they make bourbon in the fine Commonwealth of Kentucky. Right? Kentucky's a Commonwealth? I think it is. What time is it in my country? Right now, it's 9 a.m. here in the East Coast of these United States. Great to see you. Hello there, Jose. Welcome. Dimitri's here on YouTube. How's it going there? Save? Yeah, we got it. How you doing, Matthias? You like the NASA hat? This one is much better than last week. Okay, all right. Wow. Now we're getting critical of the hats. I try to keep it to non-branded or Microsoft branded hats when I'm here on this stream. There's branding scenarios that we need to make sure that we handle properly when we're on the corporate channels. NASA is a government organization here in the States, so there aren't any branding concerns with using their logos and that kind of thing. Boparuski, salute. Great to see you again. Thank you for tuning in. You love the glasses. What brand type are they? Asks Ryan Wakefield. These are Gunnar glasses. Gunnar. I am a Gunnar ambassador, an influencer that they compensate occasionally to wear and promote their glasses. I was wearing these even before my affiliation with them, but these are blue light blocking glasses. These are their Razor Torpedoes, and specifically these are prescription with with a transition built into them, so they transition from blue light blocking to sunglasses when I go outside. How you doing there, Florian in Vienna? Welcome. Great to see everybody tuning in. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to get some music playing in the background here. Of course, I always use these DMCA-free, royalty-free music to hang out in the background, and I do like the Stream Beats playlist. A little bit of synthwave back here that's just kind of groovy to fill in the gap while we talk and have a good time discussing and learning a little bit about tech, about C# and .NET Aspire today. This is called Skyline Hope to get us started. This is from the Stream Beats synthwave playlist. It's groovy. It's just in the background, having a good time. Thank you so much to Harris Heller and his team of creators for putting this music together that we're listening to today. Let me put the timer up on the screen. There it is. 40 minutes of AMA, and I've got TagsApp running over here, so we can go to that as well and queue up and answer some of your questions, some of the discussion that's coming in here. Set a timer for 40 minutes. So even when I'm off screen, I've got that 40 minutes here. So if you don't like the discussion and you want to zip forward, and I know a number of folks watching the YouTube playback, they like to zip forward to the lesson. That's fine, but there's a lot to discuss and learn in this first part. Let me see here. Let me catch up a little bit. Dimitri says, I don't watch Twitch, therefore it's very convenient to watch on YouTube. That's great. Okay. Ryan likes the Gunner glasses, yet has the original MLG-themed glasses from 10 plus years ago. I have some older glasses as well, and the new tech that they have, and some of the new styles are really nice, and I've been enjoying those. CSharpDev has a small question. What's the difference between ASP.NET and Aspire? That's a great question. Let me get that queued up here. Barry says, that's right, CVG, the Cincinnati airport is in northern Kentucky, about 10 minutes from Barry, and Kentucky is indeed a Commonwealth. Got it. Yes, I was talking to Siri. That's right. Is .NET channel video, how to deploy .NET Aspire applications the same, or will I cover more? I'm going to go in and discuss a little bit more. I'm going to cover some of the same topics as well. So, coffee or tea? Coffee. Let me head over to TagsApp, and we'll go to some of these questions and start talking about and follow along and keep up with the flow coming in from the chat room. There's TagsApp. This is an application that we built on my live stream. You'll see this during .NET Conf. You'll see this during our events where we queue up and we organize your questions from a series of different online social media providers. I only have Twitch turned on. We're bringing in stuff from the Restream bot, but when we have .NET Conf, we'll bring in your content from Blue Sky, Mastodon, Twitter, and there's more we're bringing online as well, and we've got more to talk about as we get closer to .NET Conf. Let me go to this first question that we had coming in here from, where is it? From CSharpDev. There it is. Right there. What's the difference between ASP.NET and Aspire? Love this question. So, ASP.NET is the name for the frameworks that are available in .NET. It's the overall name for the frameworks that help you build web applications. You'll see it referenced in the code as the Web SDK, and you'll see namespaces in the Microsoft ASP.NET Core, as well as System.web. Okay? This is where ASP.NET Core is where you'll see things like MVC and Razor Pages, Minimal APIs, and Web API are some of the user interface frameworks that you can use that work with the Kestrel web server as part of the ASP.NET framework to let you build and deploy web applications. Now, also in that mix is Blazor. And Blazor is a layer on top of Kestrel that lets you build a very component-focused web application that can be deployed and run with server-side rendering interactive server rendering, and interactive WebAssembly rendering. So the same code that you write that runs on the web server can also run in the browser. Live, the C# code will execute in the browser. Lots of great capabilities in the ASP.NET frameworks for you to build web applications. Now let's pivot a little bit and talk about Aspire. Aspire is a group. I've been referring to it as a stack, but it's a group, it's a collection of tools and frameworks that allow you to build an application system. So you can put a service worker in there, right? A worker process in there. You can put a web application in there. You can put a web API in there. You can put a database in there. Okay? You can put other containers in there. And our friend David Fowler showed a demo during Microsoft Build where he put a container in an Aspire system that was an SMTP server. So Aspire helps to organize all the components of your application system, including your source code for your applications, other components and services that you may want to run as a developer locally. In addition to organizing all of that for you as a developer running locally, it coordinates and enables OpenTelemetry, so you get distributed logging and tracing inside your application. It all appears in one place on the dashboard that we've been learning about over the last few weeks here. Finally, Aspire provides service discovery. So when you do stitch together your worker process, your web application, your database, your Redis cache, it will allow you to share the names of those so that you can do a little bit of service discovery and you don't have to go and find the exact server name and port and all that information where it's actually running. That can get really confusing when you're working on a developer machine. In the developer instances, it will allow you to build, test, and work with your application on your workstation using container technologies. So you can use Docker for desktop, you can use Podman to help start up and run and coordinate all that with Aspire. So your ASP.NET web application can be coordinated and run as part of an Aspire system. Okay? So I hope I explained that well. Please, if you have follow-up questions, let's talk about it, because this is a real good question to get us started here. And I already covered a little bit from Ink Force there. Let's see. Coffee is much better. Coffee is much better tea. Let me catch up here. No, you're not too late there. How you doing there, Rizwan? Let's grab a couple of these and catch up with some more questions here. Boparuski. I've been spreading the .NET Aspire tech like wildfire in York. Thank you. Oh, that's great. That's awesome to hear, Boparuski. Already started to implement your precious recommendations from last stream. Okay, awesome. One question that rose, is it production ready? What is production ready? Let's talk about that. Aspire is primarily a developer tool. As you've seen in the couple of videos in this series, Aspire coordinates and enables your developer workstation so that you can have a coordinated developer view of your entire application system. In that way, and with that in mind, right, to help you coordinate, organize, and have that one-click start to run your application system as a developer, right? I would say that it's never going to be production ready because it's not intended to be run in production. The other side of that coin, however, is what we're going to talk about today. You've orchestrated, designed, and built and coordinated, here's how my application works together inside of Aspire using app host and service defaults. Today, we're going to learn about how we can take those things that you put in your developer environment and use another tool, not Aspire. We're going to be leaving Aspire today, and we're going to use another tool to deploy. That tool is, so there's 3 automated tools that will help you coordinate and deploy. I'm going to show you how AZD works. That tool is very much evolving as new features are added, as new services come online for Azure, and we learn how folks want to use this, and we start to coordinate and build out how to deploy. All of that said, your existing deployment scripts, and coming back to the question we had a little bit earlier about deploying on-prem, your existing deployment scripts will still work the exact same way with the output of an Aspire application system when you want to deploy to production, whether it's on premises, it's to Azure Container Apps, it's to some other cloud, it's to some other service, it's to some other hosting provider. All of those scripts that you did have still work. And I'll show you how there's a couple pieces there that you just need to connect and make sure you follow the convention that Aspire that Aspire encourages you to use. So great question there. Hogo on YouTube says, I love that service defaults can be a standalone project. Coworkers have been asking, how do you set up a new project with telemetry so quickly? Right? Hogo, you are spot on here. This is important. And what's really great about this is because it's a separate project, you can extend and customize that so that you have that same standard across your entire application system, right? And that means that for your DevOps folks, right, for your operations team, they can request extra health checks. They can request extra telemetry configuration. And across the entire application, you can put it in one place, rebuild, redeploy, and that gets standard deployed and integrated across the entire system. I love this comment. I think there's more that we can do with learning and extending our service defaults. And I'm going to make sure that I take that and we include that in a future episode in the series. Thank you, Hogo. Appreciate the comment. CSharpDev says, so Aspire is much wider and organized and better for microservices than ASP.NET. So Aspire doesn't so much let you build microservices, but it helps you to coordinate them. Okay? It helps you to run them. You can use ASP.NET to actually write those microservices, just like you might use Node or Python to build a microservice. Java you can use to build and write those APIs, those services that you want to integrate with. Aspire will help you coordinate them regardless of the framework you built them with. There's been, if you've had an eye on Twitter, there's been some chatter about folks who have gotten Spring Boot applications coordinated and running with Aspire. So you can absolutely step outside of just .NET and coordinate and run things. If you want to run your front end with Angular or Vue or React and build and run it on a Node application that's running with the Express web server, you can do that and have it connect in and host a separate service, a separate API that's built with ASP.NET. You can do that, and Aspire will coordinate and run those two services for you. Really great stuff. Continuing here, let me go back over and let's see if we can pick up. Let me go in here. You're welcome, A.E. Finley on Twitch. Thank you. Coffee's much better than tea. I'm not going to say that too loud for some of our friends in the UK and other places that enjoy tea. Let me see here. Let me bring in a couple more questions. And let's light these up here. Let's start with Ryan up here on YouTube. Do I have a video that goes over my OBS setup? The AI or whatever is stripping out my background is absolutely amazingly pristine. Would love to see my setup sometime. I have a couple blog posts on my blog. If you go to jeffreyfritz.com, you can see information about my OBS setup here. My setup. So I'm not using AI. This is not AI. This is old school chroma key. I have a green screen here behind me, and the key to chroma key. Folks don't tell you this, but the key to chroma key is good even lighting. So here, let's just show you real quick. That's right. So I have a green screen behind me. For my fourth camera is back now. My daughter borrowed it for college, so I can set back up my other. I have a standing set over here, so that with a full curtain on the back wall, so that I can do and show things standing next to the code and whatever. But I have effectively turned my home office into a television studio. Yes, with 4K cameras. I only broadcast at 1080 because 4K, it doesn't matter. The providers don't actually deliver 4K. Boparuski with a question here. Is it possible to have the open telemetry from .NET Aspire send logs to and traces to another service like you would have in Azure or other cloud providers? Yes. And I'm going to go back to the service defaults comment from Hogo. If you look in service defaults, there's actually some commented out blocks in there that show you how to deliver your telemetry to Azure Log Workspaces and how to deliver it into Prometheus so you can consume that with a Grafana dashboard. So yes and yes, the code's already written. It's just commented out sitting in that service defaults. So check that out. All right. Is it possible to access telemetry information from Aspire in production for an app? Yes. Is there a URL that admin can access? This is kind of the other side of the coin with what Boparuski was just asking. Yes. How's it possible? So it will automatically write entries into the logs, and I'll show you the logs when we get into Azure today. So, yep, absolutely. Bastion says, I love Aspire, but I'm concerned how in my DevOps I can use all this with staging, for example, and different external connection strings. So Aspire, when you start looking at deployment, so I'm going to go back to a little bit of what I was saying a short time ago. Your deployment scripts that you currently have still work. You can still use them, okay? Continuing with that, you just have to follow the conventions with how they do the service discovery between the various components. That said, if you wanted to use AZD or some of the other tools, there are the concepts of environments. And you can configure different environments with different secrets to deploy and run in different locations. So your dev environment has everything running for you locally. You can set up a production environment where it will, in Azure, coordinate and store all the secrets, all the connection strings, all the passwords, API keys. It'll store all of those in a key vault for you. You can stand up then other test environments if you want a stage environment, a demo environment for sales demos maybe. You want to have that set up and maintained so that it's at a pristine, neutral state so that sales folks can go through the same demo all the time. You can absolutely add these extra environments because you're right, Bastion. You, as not just a developer, but also for your quality assurance folks, for folks that want to validate your applications, you're going to want other environments. So there is a first-class concept in the AZD tool of environments and allocating and configuring other environments. So, and I'll repeat, you can still use your existing scripts that you might be using, GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps, deployment pipelines. They'll all still work the exact same way they were working before. We just need to coordinate some of the variables that are being passed in as environment variables to the various components. Really great stuff. I love these questions. Thank you so much, Bastian. Rizwan on YouTube asks, is Aspire more like Kubernetes for dev deployment? Aspire does the things that Kubernetes provides, the orchestration and coordination of services. And some of those things, you have to add in other Kubernetes, other containers, other features, other configuration into your Kubernetes cluster in order to get that. Aspire, in the development environment, has all of that for you in the box. It's an opinionated, sensible set of defaults so that it automatically does the telemetry logging and presentation. If you wanted to get the logging and tracing in a Kubernetes system Kubernetes managed system that you are running locally, you need to add in Grafana and Prometheus and Loki and a handful of other containers to coordinate and let you view and scan through and search all that stuff. And you have to do that every time with every Kubernetes setup. And you can absolutely do that. You have so many choices and options for how you coordinate that. Aspire gives you a sensible set of defaults so that you have that all configured and available for you already, and it passes connection string information into your various components as environment variables, so that even your databases, even your cache services, Redis, Postgres, RabbitMQ will log and send information into those appropriately. So this concept of components and the ability to configure and do the service discovery are opinionated, pre-installed features that you would have to do in Kubernetes by hand. Okay. Fantastic. Let me catch up on some more questions and comments in here. Yep, green screen. They're cheap and easy to get. You don't even need a green screen. You can get blue. The other side of this is actually a bright blue. But yep, that absolutely works. Yes, you've seen the secret behind the videos. There you go, Stallone. You're curious about the deployment apps using Aspire, what it brings to the table. We'll talk about that. Boparuski says, the only issue I have with .NET Aspire so far is how to use it across all environments and block access to the dashboard to certain persons only. So I haven't spent time with this yet myself, but there is security constraints on the dashboard. There are security concerns on there. There are ways that you can configure logins. I haven't done it myself. There is documentation available on Microsoft Learn about the dashboard. When you get to production, the dashboard is not available by default. You can turn it on. I'm seeing a bug with the dashboard running in the production space on Azure Container Apps right now. But you can turn it off in production and instead use Azure Log Workspaces to coordinate that stuff. Or if you want to push your stuff to a Prometheus database so you can mine it with Grafana. You can even push it. There were some great articles over the last week from our friends at Raygun and New Relic. You can push your telemetry into their services if you're using their services and coordinate and run and still use your dashboards and log analytics that you have over there. All of that is available, and they've written great documentation to show you how to extend your Aspire configuration so that when it gets to production, it uses those more enterprise-grade services where you do want to be able to configure authentication, authorization, and a greater depth and storage, retention of your logs and traces so that you can analyze them in the future. Good stuff. Really good stuff. And then there was this other comment. I'm not sure if you're supposed to deploy Aspire, says Sean. It's more like a development quality of life upgrade. Yep, you're spot on. It's Aspire, just Aspire, stops at the edge of the development workspace. It coordinates and helps you as a developer. It means that when you commit your changes into source control, it gets shared with the rest of your development team, and they get the exact same experience. They don't have to go and coordinate and figure out where things are located and to get them stitched together. It works the exact same way for everybody. And that this is a problem that I have with this application, with Tags app. Helping to coordinate other developers that want to contribute to the application when you have to configure all these different pieces of services and database and whatnot is really, really hard to do. Aspire coordinates and sets up that service discovery so everybody gets the exact same experience. Good stuff. Catching up here. There's a question about AZD, tidbit about blue greens. David Fowler is here on YouTube. Hello, my friend. Great to see you. I'll pick up there because he's answering the question about security. Yeah, dashboard can be configured to allow users with certain claims. There's documentation on Microsoft Learn about exactly how to do this. I haven't done it personally, so I can't speak towards that. I'll take a note to add security to the dashboard for a future episode of this so we can talk through that kind of thing. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate you tuning in here. Satellite VN asks, does AZD command support login using service account instead of service principal? Service account instead of service principal. I believe the answer to this is yes, because the way that you set up things on GitHub or Azure DevOps will set up and allow you to log in with that service account. So I do have, there's two login configurations in the GitHub action that will allow you to set that up and let your deployment service, your continuous deployment service, to log in and deploy and manage your system. Little tidbit about green-blue screen. Blue screens to use more in an outside setting since the color blue is less present in nature. Yes. I also, Boporowski, I also see meteorologists, weather people, right? The folks on the news have blue screens that they'll use for this as well. Quite frankly, I think they've got several different colored screens that are on curtains that they pull down from the ceiling and they just swap out depending on what they're wearing that day. One of the popular sports teams here in Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Eagles, their primary color is green. So I know that some of the local television stations use that bright blue so that the weather presenter can wear Eagles green and it doesn't disappear. You'll never see me wearing Eagles green on stream because it matches my chroma key. So, cool. Let me catch up here. Hello, Wayne in South Africa. Great to see you. I love the questions and comments coming in. I want to make sure that, and reiterate that the deployment scripts that you have now, that you might be adding the Aspire tools and frameworks onto to help you coordinate in your development environment, those deployment scripts can still work. We just need to coordinate the environment variables, the way that connection strings to your OpenTelemetry sync, to your databases, between services. We just need to coordinate that. And I'll show you where and how you can discover those pieces coming together. I want to go back. There were a couple of really good comments there that I want to talk about. Again, Hogo with the comment here. I think this is a great topic that we can dive in a little bit further about. There's a video, I believe it was Damian Edwards, in the What is .NET Aspire playlist on YouTube. youtube.com/.net, and look at the playlists. There's a playlist from the team, including folks like David, showing off here's what .NET Aspire is, here's how to do some of the common things to take you from beginner into a little bit of an intermediate status. One of those things is setting up and extending your service defaults. This is a great topic that I think we can dive into and cover further. So, and the difference between Aspire and ASP.NET, I think that's something for folks that are new to .NET. We need to make sure we reiterate, and make sure everybody's up to speed on. I've got about 10 minutes left here in our Ask Me Anything segment, getting things started, talking about all the things that are going on. .NET Aspire. Bastion asking, I'd love to see how I change my DevOps, my connection string that I declared locally. It's an environment variable. You just pass the environment variable around. So we can take a look at that. Matthias asking, who created the .NET framework? Richard Campbell has a fantastic lecture that he gives, a session, a keynote that he'll give at various conferences around the world, talking about the history of .NET. The .NET framework was originally created back in 2001 by a series of Microsoft teams that wanted to make development easier and coordinate these various languages and frameworks and start enabling folks to build websites easier. There's a handful. There are three primary folks that Richard refers to that kind of led the pillars of the .NET story. Scott Guthrie with the web development, Anders Hausberg with the C# programming language, and Brian Harry with the frameworks. So there's a lot more to it. I encourage you to look up our friend Richard Campbell and the history of .NET. And he talks more about this in a very entertaining and interesting discussion of the .NET framework. That said, up until about 2013, 2014, .NET framework for Windows was the only way to build .NET. In 2013, 2014, my colleagues, David Fowler, Damian Edwards, Glenn Condren, Dan Roth, Maddie Montequilla, David Ortnow started working on the what we now refer to as just .NET, the second evolution, the first rewrite of the .NET framework that was originally called .NET Core is now just called .NET. That is completely open source, works on Windows, Mac, Linux, ties in other operating systems as well, and is the foundation for tools like .NET Aspire. So, love talking a little bit about the history of the product. Great stuff there. That's a great question there, C# Titan. Yes. Let me bring in these two. Can Aspire be used in game development, like Unity and Unreal Engines? Yes. In fact, so when you think about Unreal Engine, building and coordinating several Unreal Engines, and so that you're running your application, coordinating services that your game system needs to connect into and develop against, as well as database, and collecting all the telemetry and getting that tracing and logging. Absolutely, you can do this because Aspire lets you run executables natively. You don't have to run a project or a component or a container. You could say, hey, go run this exe and pass in these command line arguments. And your Unreal Engine, your Unity game can pick up those environment variables and use that to configure how you publish logs, statistics, what have you. Really cool stuff. There was an article. I'm going to go to Aspirify. I'm going to go to my own website about this. About using it with Unreal. There we go. There's a GitHub repository here that shows you how this person, DeepX, put together and got their application, their Unreal Engine, working with Aspire. Great stuff. And I'll talk about this. Is aspirify.net. This is a website that I built that is your news hub for all things happening about .NET Aspire. So check that out, aspirify.net. Let's see, continuing here. A couple really good things here. Love seeing this. Aspirant is a new kind of playground where the team is experimenting with things. There's no commitment to features becoming tools, techniques there becoming features. There's no commitment to that. It's a playground for experimentation. But you can absolutely take a look at some of the things in there and voice your approval, voice your disapproval, encourage the features that you do want to see evolved and added into the framework. Lots of great questions on YouTube here. Twitch friends, you still out there? Hello. Let me see. Bastion asks, I thought in Aspire it's not possible with a secret. You don't need to use AZD initial environment config. You can create. Aspire will manage secrets for you. It'll generate secrets for you when you deploy new features. But you can pass those secrets, and we'll show you, those secrets get passed in as environment variables to the various systems. So you can absolutely configure those things however you'd like when you get to production. Wayne on YouTube asks, would it be possible to have Aspire generate application manifests and configure applications with dependency microservices to be integrated with Service Fabric, SDK, programming, and deployment model? Thank you, David. Right now, Aspire and the AZD tools don't know how to generate Service Fabric artifacts. However, you can write your own scripts that take the output of your build and deploy appropriately. Those deployment capabilities do still work. Nothing changes on those. You will have to pass in the various configuration options that you set up in Aspire so that it knows how to communicate with the other features that you want to deploy. This type of feedback is absolutely what the team wants to hear, so they can prioritize and decide how to include features for future releases. And right now, we just did a release. Right now, they're all ears, wanting to hear things like this. Hey, I'd like to be able to use Aspire to work with Service Fabric. Totally get it. And highly motivated teams can build their own tooling. It's a very extensible framework. And I mentioned earlier, David did a fantastic demo at Microsoft Build. You can find that on the .NET channel. You can find that demo. It's also linked on Aspirify. And where he shows how to wrap a container, in that case, an SMTP server, a mail server, so that you can use it as part of Aspire. It's very easy to extend these once you learn some of the primitives about how to work with the framework. That's a little bit further advanced than what we're going to cover in this series, and we'll maybe come back to that in the second pass and talk about some of those more intermediate and advanced topics. Let me see here. Armin says, does Arthur want to use Identity Server and an API gateway to his blog in the future? I say, yeah, I like where you're going here, Armin. So and let me pause the question there. So, right, the scenario that we've been telling for this series is that Arthur, the author, built a very simple blog with Razor pages, and it just read Markdown from disk and would turn that Markdown into HTML and put it on a Razor page. Nothing to it. But Arthur wanted to invite his friends to start blogging with him and using more of the service, so we've been adding features, right? So the question here, continuing, does Arthur, our mythical creator of this blog system, want to use Identity Server and an API gateway in the future? Or maybe he wants to establish communication between services with RabbitMQ. He does want to use RabbitMQ in the future because we're going to start to generate thumbnails for his blog posts. So he absolutely wants to do that. He also wants to use blog storage so that he's not just creating blog posts with text, but he's starting to receive and handle images and placing those appropriately in Azure storage and then generating thumbnails from it. And generating thumbnails, I think RabbitMQ can help us with that communication between services. So I love where you're going here, Armin. Thank you so much for poking a little bit there. I'm not sure about identity server and API gateway. We'll take a look at that and see about setting that up in the future. Hey, Napalm Codes, good to see you. Hello, hello. Brady had a great demo about using Orleans with Aspire. Yes, he did. Yep. Napalm asks, I'm curious about using Aspire and Akka actors. It's similar, and I'd imagine it's similar to Orleans. Yes, it is. Very similar. We're going to get through that and show that at some point, probably way later on. It's not on my agenda to cover with this, just because there's Orleans and the actor model is a little bit further away from the topic. I wanted to show getting started, getting an initial system and architecture running. Setting up actor model is a little bit further down the line. Dave comments here, Arthur, thank you. Yes. Should check out the wire-compatible LavinMQ. It's massively more performant. Is it? Okay. I'll add that to my notes to follow up on later. So, as a potential. Okay. Hey there, Fatlum. Hello. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for asking. That's the end of our time that I have set aside for AMA here. Thank you so much for the questions. I'm going to leave Tags app open here so that as questions come in, I can track and catch up with them and even follow up on future episodes. So really appreciate your interest jumping in here asking questions. Thank you, Matthias. That's very kind. Very, very kind. So, here's the deal. Last night I was practicing getting ready for today's stream. And this happened to me once before. I'm practicing deployment to Azure. And some sort of an outage happened. So we're going to do this on the fly, live. I have the script points that I want to make sure that I cover. But I was not able to deploy last night, so we're going to do this live and we're going to talk through this. I know where some of the bumps in the road are, and we're going to talk through those and show a little bit here. But yeah, and there's feedback for the team that's coming out of a little bit of what I ran into last night, and that's all good. That's all great, and happy to send that information back. So, as opposed to the first 3 episodes in this series where it was very scripted, we're going to go a little bit more live today and talk through this and see exactly what works, what doesn't work, and talk through it a little bit. Did I cause the outage? No, Walter, that wasn't me. No. There was somebody asked, I thought I saw back there. What is the adoption rate for Aspire? You're talking about a product that's 3 weeks old. The product's 3 weeks old. We released it the 3rd week of May. if you're the folks that are watching this live, it's 3 weeks old. Like, we don't know yet. It's that's like asking Apple on the day of WWDC, what's the adoption rate of iOS 18? Well, it's not published and out there for the environment. I don't know, what's the adoption? The answer is 0. So for that scenario, for us, we don't know yet. We know that there are a lot of people coordinating, talking to us on the .NET Aspire GitHub repository. There's a lot of folks that are interested in this. 3,200 stars, 600 some issues, 76 pull requests out there. It's very active. Look, they've been making changes in here on the main branch as recently as 2 days ago. Like, they're actively working on it. There's a lot of folks talking about it. The adoption rate, hard to say at this point. It's still very early to have that discussion. Let me pause here just for a second. Yeah, he doesn't ask. He doesn't know it either. It's not something that we can answer. Thank you, David. Appreciate the feedback. We know it's more than 0. we know that, and I don't think I'm speaking out of line when I say this. We know that the Aspire team, in designing and setting forth the problem statement for what they wanted to solve with the tools in Aspire, we know that they coordinated and worked with some of the other production system teams at Microsoft. I don't think I can share which ones, but they worked with some of those folks to ask what their pain points were, and some of them have started tinkering with and using for some of their local development. So what you're going to hear, yeah, lots of design discussions have been had, right? It's important that you know that there are teams at Microsoft that are using Aspire to help their day-to-day development. And it's not 0. We are seeing that number grow for real apps that you use. Yes, for real apps that you use. Totally. And I think that's important that you know that these are engineers, these are developers that are building very large applications that you use every day, or you use some part of every day, that are coordinating and using Aspire. More uptake than Ty. Well, that's so. You're wondering if Aspire will help with other stages of deployment other than development? Yes, it does. It totally does. So I wasn't sure how much we could talk about this, but I'm happy that we could talk about that. Let me grab that for. So yeah, there we go. Thank you, David. And I need to get the YouTube connection working here. Let's bring in those 3. So the YouTube would allow us to actually have the YouTube message here. There are teams adopting it right now internally. So, and I wasn't sure if this was something that we could discuss too much, but there are discussions, there are plans. The team is trying to coordinate with the Aspirate project team and see what we can do to collaborate and include it as part of Aspire. So, 2 open source projects, makes sense to have them collaborate. So, that said, Microsoft teams don't accept projects that other folks work on lightly. There's a lot of discussion and coordination to make sure that they're properly supported when they become part of a proper Microsoft supported product. So that's something that gives a level up, a step up on those products. Great questions here, and I'm glad that I can pause and catch up on some of these before I get into the actual content. Aspirate will hopefully become part of the Aspire repo and developed alongside it. More to come over the next few months. Initially targeting Ignite. Ignite in November is the operations show that you'll see folks talking about Power Apps and Exchange and SharePoint and Teams at. That's a week after .NET Conf, November 12th, 13th, and 14th. Save the date. We're planning and working on .NET Conf now. You better believe there's going to be a lot of .NET Aspire content as part of .NET Conf. You'll be able to watch it right here on these channels that you're watching right now. You're looking into creating CI/CD pipelines using Docker images? Oh, Boparuski. Let me get into the demos. And no. You don't need to do that. No. Is there any difference between MySQL and Postgres in .NET? Yes, there is a difference. There's different providers because they have different syntax. However, you can connect them both up to Entity Framework and that Object Relational Mapper tool, and other tools like Dapper. Dapper with two P's and an E, Dapper, D-A-P-P-E-R, will help to hide all of that SQL for you. Oh, that's great to see the compliment there for David. That's very kind. What's an API gateway and how can it be implemented in .NET? It's a reverse proxy. To define it simply, think of a gateway that you might have at doors at the front of the market. And if there's only one set of doors that open, you can control the flow of shoppers that come into the store. It's a gateway. It's a reverse proxy, just like that door, that will control the flow of interaction coming into your APIs, your service. That said, there's other features and things you can turn on there regarding security and rate limiting, and how it fans out and supports multiple instances of APIs and services that live behind that proxy. Yeah, it's a gateway between back-end and front-end use. Yep. So I like to use the door metaphor because it's something that you clearly think of, that there's a bunch of people all want to get into the market, want to get into the store at the same time, and they're all trying to go through one door. Well, maybe it's a wider door on days when there's a big sale. Maybe it's a smaller door because on days when there aren't very many people working in the store, and you need to limit how many shoppers come in. Maybe it closes sometimes because it's a high security store like a jewelry shop, and you only allow 3 or 4 people in at once. That control of the size of that door is what an API gateway does. Hey, Karthik. Hello. Welcome. API gateway. It's like, yeah, okay. I got that one. All right. Let's talk about this and do a little bit of deployment discussion here. So there's Visual Studio. We love Visual Studio. Let's talk about and use Visual Studio for a bit of this today. I'm going to go back. I'm not going to work with the microservice inclusion that we did last time, where we kind of reached outside and brought in a microservice from outside of our repository. I'm going to stay with the simple scenario of everything's in our one repository. And this is where we left off after episode 2 in this series, module 2. Okay, all the source code for this up to this point is available in the Big Bad Blog repository. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching the recording, it's linked down below in the description. Make sure you click through there and you can get more about that. You can go to my GitHub, github.com, CSharpFritz /Big Bad Blog, emphasis on the bad, because it's not that great yet, because we haven't built it yet. I'm going to drop that link in chat for you. There you go. Is it an extension that I have in Visual Studio to color my tabs? What, over here? Nope, that's a feature of Visual Studio. So 2 things that I do in Visual Studio for my configuration. Let me bring that over so you can actually see it. See, there's a gear up here, and it's kind of hanging off the side there. But if I right-click over here, there's Set Tab Layout, and you can choose Options. And inside of here, not only can I choose the tab layout between left, right, and top. Most folks have it by default at the top. There's also a colorization of the tabs that you can set up. Pin tabs, preview. Where is it? They've moved this around in this version, and I don't see it. Tab colorization method. There it is, right there. So I have them changing colors by file extension. You can set up a regular expression so that for different scenarios, they're colored differently. You can set up by project, they're different colors. But there's also, oh, I thought there was an option. I don't see it now. There was an option that allowed you to set specific colors, and I don't see it there now. Well, that's not what I'm covering today, but I wanted to show you. So, yep, built into the system now. So we've been building and extending this from that simple Razor application. There it is, bigbadblog.web, right? And we've been extending the name of this, the features of this, so that it went from there's my posts sitting there on disk into more capabilities so that it will have a database and other features as we deploy and work with our application. And we want to make it more like a real CMS, a real content management system that our friend Arthur the author is using. Okay, so we have our app host up here, and I've been using I've been waiting for David to judge me because he's been doing some reviews of some of my code for putting each one of the services that I configure for this system. I put them in regions up here inside my app host program because it gets a little confusing trying to manage and see all of these things out here. I know I'm being judged silently on the use of regions here, but I think it does a nice job to help visualize that I'm coordinating these three services inside my program, right? To allow these to be built and deployed. So, what's next? We want to actually build and deploy this thing. How do we do that? Yeah, look at it. Say. So, a couple different things. Nothing has changed in how this built and run. The way it coordinates and sends information about our Redis cache or my post database, that's a little Postgres database. And I like Postgres. You can use MySQL. You can use SQL Server. I like Postgres when giving demos like this because it's nice and small, doesn't take up a lot of memory, and I need to be able to coordinate and orchestrate and run a bunch of different services here to present and show the video here. So I go with the smaller, lighter database for this. But when I look at that website, right, and we look at the details of it here in the dashboard, right, what's important for me to deploy are these two pieces right here. The database connection string and the output cache connection string. The other things for the telemetry that are being logged, they can be handled and deployed and managed and piped to different locations. You want me to show dark mode? I can show you dark mode. So there's themes here, system, light, dark. You can turn on dark mode if you'd like. I'm waiting for somebody to send a pull request to the dashboard repository to add hot dog stand. Or Darkula, right? We like the Darkula theme. Some of those. The cyberpunk blue, purple neon. That'd be kind of cool to get some extra CSS style sheets in here, but anyways. Monokai, sure. Hotline Miami, there you go. Karthik, you love C#? Me too. You hate Postgres since you're in university, bad teacher? Oh, that's a shame, C# dev. You don't... What? What? You don't like light mode for the... We're just going to code like this. How's that work? No? All right. So I was saying the important part, if you use your existing deployment scripts, okay, because you're just deploying a website. In this case, I have just a website to deploy. The important part to your configuration to continue using the code that you've already written is to capture and make sure you pass along these two environment variables. Okay? So, I'll go back to dark. So, you can deploy and use that same GitHub action that deploys to Azure App Service. That same GitHub action, that same Jenkins script that deploys out to AWS, to DigitalOcean, to Google Cloud. You can absolutely use those same scripts. Just make sure, in this case, you continue to use those same two environment variables. Or whatever other environment variables you might have for your service. Just coordinate. That's the convention that you need in order to make sure that it still reads and allows these Aspire-enabled methods, add output cache, to allow that to light up. Okay? To allow that to work. I added Postgres database services, and I moved all of that configuration for Postgres, and there's the coordination, right? The Aspire coordination for Postgres and Entity Framework that also adds in the layers with all the logging and tracing for us. So, should you learn .NET MAUI now? Sure. Okay. So that's how those configuration pieces fit together, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a second. The tool that we recommend folks use to deploy to Azure that's going to make it real easy and give you a nice handhold experience to get you to Azure is AZD. Okay. Yeah, this is where I was working last night. So AZD you can get from Winget. Right? So if you're on Windows, you can download and get the AZD tool. It's right there, Microsoft.azd. All right. I can update my version of Winget by just saying Winget update. Oh, I do have the 194. Fantastic. And it'll bring down and install and lay out the tool so that you can use it everywhere. What's my Oh My Posh theme? I don't know. It's the one that's in my .files repository. Check out C# on GitHub, CSharpFritz, .files, and you can see my Oh My Posh configuration there. Even the background wallpaper is there if you'd like that. All right. Okay, so continuing here, I can now set up and run things locally. You can also get, I believe you can also get AZD from the APT stores. You can install it on Mac and Linux easily. There's instructions about how to install AZD for those systems on Microsoft Learn. I should include that in my notes. How to install AZD. Okay. So now that I have it, I can just say AZD init. And I'm at the, let me show you, right? I'm at the root of my solution folder, right? My solution, my app host, my database services configured there, my website, right? It's all sitting here. I can execute AZD init and it will start prompting me, what's the application you want to set up? This is a one-time thing. So yes, use the code in the current directory and it's going to take a look and it's going to discover, hey, this is an Aspire application system that you have here. I know how to deploy that. Let me write down some of the configuration for this. So here we go. And hey, look, I discovered a .NET Aspire application, and it's in this folder. There's the app host. AZD will generate the files necessary to deploy using Azure Container Apps. That's the current way that we have available to deploy applications with .NET Aspire is using Azure Container Apps. That's the automated way that you can do this. Like I said, you can absolutely deploy to other hosting configurations if you'd like. So app service, you want to deploy to a virtual machine, go for it. All of those options are available to you. You have to write some of those scripts yourself. And there's scripts available that help you with that. But let's deploy this to Azure Container Apps. So, yep, confirm and continue initializing the app. What's the name of the environment you want to deploy this to? So I'm going to call this BBB production, right? So it generated 2 files for me, Azure YAML and this next steps MD. This is why I say that you kind of get handheld through the experience. Because, like many folks, when it comes time to configure continuous integration, continuous deployment, it's a pain in the neck. It's having to configure and move things around and test and deploy and test and deploy and see if we get the right script in place. These are going to give you the default configurations that you need to get deployed quickly. Okay? So let's take a look at what's in that Azure YAML file to start here. And it's very clear here. This is the name of the application. Here's the services. And that name came from the current folder. I don't want that name for what I'm going to be deploying. So here's what I'm going to go and change that. I want to go and change that name to something else instead of to database migration. I'm going to call this, right? I'm going to call this, spell it right, Fritz. Big Bad Blog. There we go. Right. And I'll save that, close it. Next, it also put down this next steps MD. Well, let's take a look at that. And I'm going to use VS Code to open that up because I like its markdown formatting. It's markdown renderer. Don't mind if I do. And it's got a nice set of steps and instructions for you that will help you learn how to provision and how to deploy. Really great set of tools here that they've built into AZD, right? Documentation built in that's going to help you get deployed. So you can just run AZD up and it will go and provision the infrastructure and deploy to Azure in one step. Whoop, done. The 2 steps that it's doing, just like when we build with .NET, right? When you build a .NET application, or you say .NET run, it restores your packages, builds the application, and then runs it. This provisions and deploys all in one shot when you say AZD up. Okay? Now, AZD pipeline configures your breakpoint. Let me follow up with you on that. Because I was having issues last night, I don't have my fallback and alternate scenarios configured here that I can talk about. Let me pin that and get back to you on a future episode on it. I'm sorry. So information about troubleshooting, how to configure, and what's great here is that's pretty much your GitHub action that you need. Okay. Real easy to go through and see exactly what it's doing. It's going to run on Ubuntu latest, bring in a bunch of configuration items, check out your code, install AZD, and there's 2 different ways that it's going to log in with Azure, log in with your Azure credentials. So if you have client credentials available, it'll log in this way. The federated credentials is what I think you're asking about, Bastion, and it should help you. There's instructions. here about how to set that up with your GitHub repository so that it is properly authenticated to be able to log in and allow GitHub to do the deployment. Okay. But once it's logged in with Azure, it will provision the infrastructure and then deploy. Not bad. Okay. It's all right there. As a default configuration, easy to see and do. What I do want to call out, though, is this is a nice starting point. It doesn't have things like .NET test in here, okay? Or any other configuration prep that you want to do to maybe generate code for your application. You're going to want to insert those just before the provision, okay? You're going to want to insert your unit testing. You're going to want to insert any code generation that you want to do, because the provision and deploy steps, these take a long time. These will take upwards to 5-10 minutes to do. Okay? We're going to get to bicep modules in a minute here because I'm going to show you where AZD breaks. All right? So these are using the output of generated bicep modules. This is a GitHub action. It's built using YAML format. The bicep modules are scripts that are used to provision Azure resources. Okay? We'll see those in a minute here. So if I wanted to deploy this, I can push this out right now by saying AZD up. Spoiler alert, it's not going to work. So it's going to initialize the bicep provider. It's going to analyze what we have and figure out exactly what it needs to deploy. It's giving me a list of the subscriptions I have. Where would you like to deploy it? And I'm going to deploy it to whatever region. I'm going to deploy it to my favorite region, East US 2, because that's close to me. This doesn't really matter because I'm going to swap that out and I'm going to show you the benefits of what it does now and what you probably want it to do in just a second. So here it is. It's starting to deploy and I can view the progress on the Azure portal. I'm control clicking and is it opening in another? It's opening in another here. Take that off screen. Okay. The Azure portal decided to put my phone number on screen without notification yesterday. That was fun. So it's deploying and setting up the resources, and we can see the operation details. Great. There's a list of things that if you worked and needed to support and see all of this information, you could actually dig into. For novices like me, I don't know what to do with that stuff. I just know that it's allocating resources. Like, there's stuff over here that it's allocating. Awesome. Cool. I don't know why it's got 2 container registries in there. That's interesting. And 2 log analytics workspaces. That's fun. But container apps environment so that it can run all the containers with all the things in it that we're going to be deploying. But this is going to fail. And I'll show you why. And I'll show you how we can customize it. And there are good reasons why they fail, and they're a good bit of feedback that we can share with the team to help improve this. And these products are open source. These are things where, you know what, when you do stumble into weird scenarios, it's good to give them feedback, and they can help do some of these things. They were the same. Yeah. So, right, log analytics workspace, LAW, log analytics workspace, and then some random string. Doesn't really matter what it is. It's the one that's allocated and in this resource group. Hello, Yurichi. Hello. Yeah, I don't know why they're appearing twice. Kind of strange. Not gonna lie. When are we gonna start with email? Not for a while. Not for a while. So now it's creating and updating resources. And if I remember correctly, this should be where we see it stop. So, like I was saying, this part is where it takes a lot of time, right? There are hooks, there are checks in here that will allow it to check for existing services already deployed, and it won't try to deploy new versions of those. What were you looking for, Bobaruski? So we should have this here in just a second. But it... Oh, snap! It worked. It wasn't supposed to do that. I had a great failure scenario to show you, and it worked. Dang! Okay. Okay. Where all those resources determine and how? We'll talk about that in a bit. Off topic, Yurichi. Sorry, the AMA was last hour. So, what I want you to see, right, the default capabilities that you set up and you tell it to deploy with AZD is going to put everything in a container. Okay. This is important to recognize. You may want to do this. You may not want to do this with some of these things. So these are the internal endpoints because it has that .internal in the name, right? You can't navigate to this from the outside. These are capabilities that are only available inside, but it's deploying these services. If we go back over here to Azure, it says deployment is complete. I'll go to the resource group, and you can see, let's zoom in a little bit there, right? It's deployed Big Bad DB as a container app. So this is Postgres running as a container app. That might be okay for test scenarios that you're deploying to. You can absolutely run with this if that's what you'd like. Similarly, there's the Redis cache. And it's sitting out here and running using that same version of Redis that you configured back over here in app host. Right? So there's a default version that is configured here, and you can set different versions of it. It's deploying and using that as a container out here, and you can see that. That might be what you want. That's okay. There's the database migration container app. That's that little service, that service worker that's deploying and running the container that's going to, and you can see it's our image. It's deploying and running that from our container registry. There it is. Right? So the application that we built, the database migration, it's right there. There's the website. And those are the names of the services that we had in app host are burned into the name of the repository. Now, I want to make sure, I see a couple good questions there that I want to make sure I come to from Fatlum and Dilip. I want to make sure I get your questions here. The way that it currently deploys these, there's discussion to change this. The way that it currently deploys these, you get a new repository each time you deploy. So this repository has that version of the application in there, and it has the tag latest. AZD does not currently give you a new tag, a new latest tag in the same repository when it deploys the next version. Okay, there's discussions, there's things going on around there, but the way that it runs right now, you're going to get lots of repositories out here. Okay, I have a PowerShell script that I will share with you in the documentation that will help clean up some of these, because if you're doing continuous deployment, this is going to fill up and take up a lot of space. And if we look at the monitoring for this, you get 10 gig on the initial repository registry here. If you're building and deploying large applications, you can fill that up quick. Okay? So I want to make sure you know how to clean that up a little bit. Let me come to some of the questions that are there in chat, because I think there's a couple of good ones there that I want to make sure that I get to and I cover here. So I'm going to use TagZap to help coordinate some of these. Fadlum asks, so Aspire dashboard runs in a container on Azure? The dashboard does. You don't have to use it. There's a bug in there right now and it doesn't work properly, but it is in there. And I can... where is it? There's web. Right. So there's the .NET Aspire dashboard. If I open this, I was getting a Blazor error coming out of this. And yeah. So there's a bug in there right now that they know about and they're fixing, but it will be there and working. So, continuing here, is Azure free tier enough for personal apps and websites? It is, however, Azure container apps are not free. In the free tier, you're going to be running on smaller instances of Azure App Service, Azure Container Apps, and this free update that I'm showing you, the free deployment. No, rephrase that. .NET Aspire and this simplified deployment using the AZD tool use Azure Container Apps, and that is not free. It's inexpensive, but it is not free. AE Finley, what if I want Postgres flexible server? Spoiler alert! Coming up next. We're going to get there in this. High Tech Redneck says, one thing with database migrations that has always scared me is possibly losing data when the migration runs. How likely is that in this situation? Well, you can see all of your migrations because they're sitting here in your migrations folder, right? So I can actually take a look and see exactly what the tasks are that they're running and customize appropriately, right? So I can see all the create index things in here, and if there is something that's doing a delete or an alter that you don't want, delete it, remove it. You can absolutely tweak these for you. That said, the Entity Framework team has gone to great lengths to make sure that the migrations that they give you are non-destructive. You need to particularly be aware when you have sample data. You use the has data methods inside your Entity Framework configuration. That may delete and move some of your data. Great example of that, right? So, let me see. All right, we're gonna go off script just a little bit here. Oh, it's in the context, not the. My bad. It's in the context. I was right. There you go. So I say builder entity has index. Right. If I also do something like builder entity Where is it? Identity role? Yeah, there we go. Right. I need to bring that in. Thank you. Right, and I do has data like that. Identity role, the roles in the actually, is it? Yeah, in the ASP.NET roles collection that's out here, right? So this dot roles, right? And roles is a DB set of identity role. If you take a look at those, it has a string ID here. That's a GUID. So when you say builder has data on something that has generated keys like a GUID or an identity, you may inadvertently end up with it, particularly with GUID, you may end up with it thrashing that data in your migration steps. Be aware of that. You may want to hard code that GUID in your insert step there for has data instead. Okay. So thanks for the question. Appreciate it here. What's the easiest way to use a Redis cache service? That's where we're going. That's where we're going. So let's talk about that. So we've deployed and the application is out here running. And actually, is it even going to work? I don't think it's going to work because the markdown files on disk, the markdown files on disk aren't set up to migrate properly in the current configuration. I need to go back and update the script. But before the next episode, I'll have that working so that we're talking about and seeing that. So if you were to go and key this in right now live, you're not going to get anything. I don't have the posts deploying properly. But let's go back and talk about exactly some of the questions and comments there. Gosh, what if I want to use the Postgres service that's on Azure, or I want to use the Redis cache service because I might already have a Redis cache available out there, or I want to use the Postgres database service because I want to be able to scale up and down my Postgres database. We got you, friend. Here's the deal. Not only do we have the ability here for you to set up in your development environment, I want to work with these tools here locally, but you can also add in NuGet packages that will help you with deployment. So I'm going to right click and say add new .NET Aspire package. I'm going to get the .NET NuGet configuration screen here, but I'm specifically, darn it. I'm going to look for the Azure services here. And these will give me at deployment time appropriate mapping, allocation, and provisioning for those services that you might want. Like there's the Redis service. So let's go and include that. Yep. Go ahead. I also, right there's, if I wanted SQL Server, sure, go get that one. Azure Key Vault, if I want to do things specific with that, there's Postgres. I'll grab Postgres and bring that in. Did I see Azure Search? I think I have an idea for a topic for tomorrow's stream. So I just brought in those couple of packages. So up here, where I'm setting up Postgres, right? And I added the database there, right? I believe if I have this done right, no, that's the database. I can't do that on the database. Let me split this, and I'm going to call this DB server. Yep, do that. There we go. As Postgres flexible server, you need to do this on the database server, not on the actual database, and that will allocate a Postgres flexible server for you. There is an overload here so that you can provide some options to configure it if you'd so like, right? So I can provide other options here about that resource to configure it. I'm not going to go into that today. I'm just going to tell it publish that. And the same thing with the Redis cache down here, right? I can say as Azure Redis, and it will publish and allocate instead a Redis cache for us. I've added 2 packages to this project. I've added 2 lines, right? I broke up this one, but I've added 2 lines of code. Right? It says deployment took 5 minutes, 4 seconds. I'm going to say AZD up again here. So the configuration for me running locally, those as Azure things, those are publish concerns. I messed up. I thought we just had that. I just thought we had that working. Like it was right there. No? What changed? Like, we had the publish. The Azure stuff disappeared on me. It was right there. Hang on. It says they were removed. Do that again. Yeah. They're right there. Did something... No. Weird. Like it was... Hang on. We're gonna clean you. Oh yeah, no. And that's kind of the value in me doing this live, right? Okay. And it doesn't see that now either. What the heck? Remove this. Rebuild app host. Okay. There it is. I don't know what changed. Okay. And I should be able to just do AZD up. Yeah, did someone release the Chaos Monk A Frank? So it's going to initialize and inspect and take a look at what we have. There we go. Did you see it there? It said comparing deployment state. It's looking at what's currently in Azure for this environment and setting up and going to go and create and update resources. Okay. It's updating what's in the key vault. Okay. While it's doing that, I want to talk about environments real quick. So there are environments you can configure inside of here. All right. ENV, there it is. So you can watch it up top there. And I'm going to run AZD ENV list. And it shows me, here's my one environment. You can add more environments, and you can set which one is active for it to deploy with. Okay? And those different environments can have different destinations that they're going to. So if you want to run multiple environments on Azure, because you want to have your North America environment and you also want to have your Southeast Asia environment, because you've got different deployments for different parts of the world that do slightly different things, or so that you can load balance, whatever it might be, right? Maybe your Southeast Asia environment's where your QA team is located. Sure, whatever. You can do that by managing the environment list here, okay? And adding and changing different environments. But you see, this is using... oh, that was wonderful. Thank you. Is that what I was hoping to see fail earlier? Maybe? Let's see what happens here. Yes, gremlins. There's absolutely gremlins in this system. So this is a V1 tool. There are certainly bugs. There are things that the team is working on versioning and releasing all the time. So that makes deploying it with Winget now really compelling, right? Or APT, so that you can always get the latest version of the tools with the latest fixes to allow you to build and deploy. I'm not sure why the database didn't go there. Let's take a look on the Azure console and take a look-see at our... Yep, there's... Yep. Right, it should be RGBBB. Just show me the resource group already. There it is. Right, there it is. Azure database for Postgres. It deployed it. Azure Cache, there's the database. It deployed. So now it's using those, and it didn't take down, right? So there's the output cache container app. There's the Postgres container app. It didn't take those down, right? I think it's supposed to. Yes, Boparuski. That was what I wanted to show in having a failure here. I was going to force a failure to happen, but yep, I'm gonna show that in just a second, and dive in and show you the actual bicep scripts that it'll run. So, yeah, cache for Redis. Where'd it go? There it is, right there. So it creates a basic 1 gigabyte instance for you. There are ways to customize this. We'll see that in just a minute. But it's deployed and updated and added new features based on those couple lines in my app host C# file, right? If I'm running continuous integration here on this, like with that GitHub action that I showed you, it's automatically standing up these new services for me that I requested in my C# configuration. Really cool. It's really cool to see that. Now, other providers, other hosting providers, I haven't looked too much at the AWS tools, but we are encouraging this type of help you provision automatically from your app host. That said, though, the tool helps you generate scripts, so even if you don't use that as Azure Postgres service, as Azure Redis, if you don't use those statements, you can still get it and customize it to deploy and use the scale and number of replicas that you want in your production space. See, this is kind of frustrating for me now because it's just hanging out there and it's clearly working. Or are we seeing that that's the container registry? Go back, go to the cache. Azure Cache for Redis. Is it? Yeah, it didn't knock them down yet. So it's still allocating it. Okay. I guess it's taking some time. So this is a live demo. What can I tell you? Sometimes things go quickly. Redis is particularly slow to provision. So what I do, thank you, David, for the insight there. What I do, I've already got a Azure Redis cache out there that I use for a couple other services, so I just use the same service again and again. So what I do for Aspirify, because Aspirify uses the same Redis cache I use for my blog and for another website. I don't do that. I do publish as a connection string. And at create time, you saw it prompt me for it prompted me for a database password to fill out this parameter. It'll prompt me for when I run azd up to create that connection string. I fire it in there, it saves that locally, and it lets that get deployed. And it'll configure that connection string. So what I do want to show you, I was making a big thing about your deployment needs to continue using the same variable names so that they can be read and consumed. So when we take a look in our web application, we can see the instance of the container that's running. There it is, right? And I can pull that down and look at that if I want. But I can see the secrets that are being passed in here. And I can see here's the name of what it's looking for, right? And there's the connection for where it's going to go and find and connect to that other service. So if you deploy with some other tool to some other service to some other location, as long as you provide these same variables that are created for you in your Aspire development environment, you'll get the exact same thing. So keep using your same scripts. Just make sure you connect your services together and generate these variables appropriately. They are working on the Redis deployment. Oh, that's cool. See that insight that I didn't have? Thank you. So really nice to get that deployment, to get that automatic capability there. I thought it would tear this down because I'm not using this anymore. Maybe it's because the cache isn't done deploying that it isn't going to tear that down immediately for me. So I publish and reuse the same cache for a handful of different things because, quite frankly, if you look at that cache, it's a gigabyte. If you're doing, in this case, we're building a simple blog. If you're doing output caching, think about the size of the HTML that you're shipping when you output cache. It's maybe 50 to 100K. Maybe you're going a little bit crazy and it's as big as a meg. You're not using a gigabyte of this yet. You're not. There's capabilities that you can reuse and share this resource. Okay, AZD doesn't tear down resources. Okay, I wasn't sure. I couldn't remember if it did or not when I've been through this a bit, and I couldn't remember if it knocked things down. So, yeah, check out the .NET Evolution Discord. That's where the .NET team hangs out. So, yeah. So that's going to take just a little bit to finish. So I wanted to make sure that I showed that. I don't want to skip away from this. I've got 5 minutes left. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cheat and go up and go to branch 3 then. And I'll do azd init here. And the question from Boparuski was, gosh, what if I want to tweak or tune these scripts? We got you. Absolutely. You can use the infrasynth commands here. Yeah, go ahead. And I'll call this BBB3, and it generates the same files. But I want to generate the scripts because I might want to tune these. I might want to change where they're deployed, have things go to different locations, change the skew on these. This is kind of your escape hatch to be able to see those scripts and tune them and force AZD to use these, or you can use other tools that use Bicep to deploy, but you can generate and maintain those scripts. The important part there, maintain on your own. So if you run azd infrasynth, and there's actually a variable you have to set, it'll prompt you for it to turn this on because it's an alpha tool. You have to actually approve and say, yes, I want this, activate it for me. Let me open this in VS Code so you can see what this looks like. It generates this initial infra folder at the root of your solution, right next to your solution file, right? There's my solution file. And it generates bicep files that show here's the resources that I'm going to be allocating, and here's IDs of things that we're going to be collecting and working with. It specifies the resources, some of the resources that are going to be deployed, like Service Principal, the Log Analytics Workspace, the size of it, you can tune it here. Right, local redundant storage. This was global redundant storage. Now it's defaulting to local redundant storage. Cool. And so on and so forth, right? There's, right, that is storage for database and so on and so forth here, right? That's great. There it's allocating the Aspire dashboard, right? But what you want to see for tuning for your individual applications, did they move it? There it is. So inside the app host folder is infra, and here's for each one of my projects the YAML that specifies here's how to configure these things. Okay, so there's stuff in here like the ingress. Yes, open port 8080 for HTTP, allow insecure connections. It's an external, yes, activate. That is all enabled in there. But my API is not enabled. I can come in here and tune this if I want and have those scripts that are generated based on my Aspire configuration to deploy. I want to repeat, this is an alpha feature. If you regenerate these scripts, it will overwrite what you have here, okay? So use some source control so that you can manage and upgrade and update and use these scripts appropriately. For your DevOps folks that want to take a little bit more control over what you've generated in Aspire, this is a great way to hand them a set of scripts that adhere to what Aspire generates for you, what Aspire is looking for to coordinate, and allow them to tune where things land when you get into Azure. All right? So it's absolutely something that you need to coordinate, because the changes they make here, you need to make sure that they don't break anything that the Aspire developer environment is trying to encourage you to use and connect. All right? So you can absolutely see, there's my Mongo connection, exactly where it's located, the connection string. You know, go over to there and connect with that. And it's using service principles, actually, to connect that. The open telemetry connections, there's connection strings to, yeah, the secret reference to get into over there. So you can clearly see, and here's the Postgres database, where things are stored and how you can interact with it, right? The database migration worker service, right? And look, secured parameter, the Postgres password is being passed in. You're not managing that. It's being handled for you automatically outside of. You don't have to generate these. I'm showing you this to kind of peek under the covers how this works. If you need to customize, you can do that. So running AZD up should work in most circumstances. And they're adding features so that some of the reasons that you may have, they're adding features to the things like add as Azure Redis. They're adding APIs here so that it generates the appropriate bicep on the fly that you may want to deploy and run as you're using this. DevOps personnel need to start learning how to code. YAML will die. We think this is a more effective way to deliver those types of configurations. It's not the end-all be-all. There's certainly things that you need to customize beyond this. There's output from this that you're going to want to know how to read and coordinate and use. This is, we think, a good first step because you get the support of a compiler. At some point, we can add analyzers in here to help you and steer you into building and configuring things properly so that you have a nice experience. This is something that whether you're building and working in Visual Studio Code, or even JetBrains Rider, the compiler and the tools are going to help you be successful and deliver a good first time it works deployment. Okay, so I'm just going to peek over here and see it. Yeah, it's still trying to do the cache. I do need to wrap up. We're out of time. It's been fantastic to spend time with you together here today. Let me see if there's just one or two questions here I can collect to wrap up. Is there a place you can programmatically see the different kinds of stand-ups or streams outside of YouTube? You can crawl the YouTube playlists, and you can see the list of playlists out there for the .NET channel. Take a look. The YouTube API is easy to get access to crawl things like playlists. Take a look for the Learn C# with CSharpFritz playlist, and you'll see my videos there on this channel. If you want to watch my streams that happen, I was syndicating to YouTube. Sounds like there's some interest for me to continue doing that. I don't know. I got to tinker and see what that works. Check me out on youtube.com/CSharpFritz. So we'll add the password you set for Postgres into Key Vault. Yes, I should have shown that. If I can jump back in there. Why did it put down 2 Key Vaults? It put down 2 Key Vaults. If I take a look here, I don't have access to Key Vault, but it does put it in the Key Vault. Like, you actually have to grant yourself access. By default, you don't have, even if you're the only user on your subscription, you don't have access to Key Vault. You need to grant yourself explicitly the Key Vault administrator access to be able to see the keys and secrets that are in Key Vault. If you generate these files and see that things need tweaking, there's a way to do that in code. We're trying to make more of that possible. Right now, the bicep is your escape hatch. It's your way to add features, tweak what you want deployed, because the API is not yet available. We're at V1 of something, and it's only been available for 3 weeks. The team is discovering what features folks want to tune and are adding those appropriately. And there are ways to step down and configure some of those properties in that API in C#. There are ways to do that. It can get a little daunting going down the object graph there, but it can be done. Man, we've had a good time today. We have done so much together, talking about showing how to deploy, how to use AZD to push things out there. I didn't even show you. You can actually right-click on your app host in Visual Studio, say deploy, and it'll do the exact same thing. It'll all the things that I showed you at the command line, it gives you a nice graphical interaction to do the exact same thing. All right? So lots of great features and capabilities to help you get it out there. I showed you how it creates a markdown file that gives you all the configuration instructions and the exact GitHub action script you need to enable your application to be deployed from a GitHub action. There's a couple more steps in there that are outlined and linked in Microsoft Learn. The documentation links to it appropriately for you. It's a matter of configuring an appropriate service principal so that it knows how to deploy. All right? You're very welcome, Michael. Glad you were here and we could have this discussion. I didn't go down into it, Baparuski, just because there was so much that we had to configure for the other stuff here. I'll get it configured and basically show the afterwards next time. Thank you so much, C# Dev. Is there any framework with F#? Aspire doesn't... The only part of Aspire that requires C# is the app host and the service defaults. The applications and the services that you build that integrate with Aspire, you can absolutely use F# with. What's the topic next week? I need to reflect on what we've accomplished so far and figure it out. I do want to do Azure Storage with thumbnails. I want to get the security login all set up and working and make sure that that's visible. So we might do a little bit with Azure Storage next week and start getting set up for working with another type of microservice that consumes entries from a queue or from a service bus. So I'll have more on that in the next day or two as I plan the next episodes. I'm trying to plan only about 2 episodes ahead, just to make sure that I keep up with delivering content that you're interested in learning about. So extending service defaults, I absolutely need to get to talking about adding more capabilities with the with tracing and distributed logging, and how you can extend OpenTelemetry with your own information. That's coming. Lots we can talk about and do here. I am so glad that you joined us here today. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for watching. There's lots of great videos in my playlist on the .net channel. Check them out down here, over there. Depends on if you're watching this on your TV, your tablet, your phone, or just in the browser. If you're watching us on Twitch, it's time for a raid. Let's check out some other folks that are broadcasting on the big Twitch TV network. Let's get you connected to somebody else who's doing something cool with tech. Somebody who's doing something fun that we can connect with and have a good time talking about all the cool stuff that they're working on. You know what? And I think we need to connect with... We're going to do this. We got to do this. We're going to connect with our friends on the Microsoft Developer Channel who are talking about Azure Database with MySQL and how you can use AI with it. So we're going to raid over to the Microsoft Developer Channel. If you're watching on Twitch, just stay right there. You're going to be magically whisked away to the Microsoft Developer Channel in just a few seconds. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to drop a link in chat if you'd like to tune in on Twitch and learn more about Azure Database for MySQL. My name is Jeff Fritz. It's been a pleasure writing code with you today. I'll see you next week as we talk more about .NET Aspire and how you can build your applications and deploy them to your favorite providers, all right? I wish you good health and good coding. Take care.